Would you work a job with no pay? Would you put as much effort as possible in your goals and dreams with no certainty of a reward? Well, that's what these college students are doing every single day. And they're working for a degree, or they're working for a future and having a job as a professional athlete. But as you can see, that college athletes, I feel they deserve compensation from their universities or the NCAA in general. So in this presentation, I'm talking about these main points of colleges and how much money they make, these coaches and the millions they make every year, and as well as the students and how their lives are affected through academics and just their daily lives, and how ultimately the NCAA reigns over their whole entire life. So at first, we'll talk about colleges and the money they make. So the NCAA, or the National Collegiate Athletics Association, is a nonprofit organization which regulates athletes of 1,200 North American institutions and conferences, and this is taken directly from the NCAA website. And so the NCAA oversees an $11 billion industry, which can be taken from a USA Today article by Steve Berkowitz, and he writes that last year they received over $1.1 billion in revenue from marketing fees, championship events, as well as other investments. And one part of the industry, one main known college, is the University of Texas, which in 2018 made $219 million, which can be found from the same article by Steve Berkowitz. And this is the most a college athletic program has ever made in the history of college sports. So if we're looking at the history, we can focus on college sports and its main source of income, which is college football. So if we're going to talk about college football, we should speak specifically about the coaches. So going back to the 1888, we'll look at Walter Camp. So he was a coach for Yale football, and he was referred to as the father of football. So he only received a small salary from Yale, which he was not able to live off of. He was actually, most of the money that he made from was being an author, because he could not live off that small salary in the late 1900s. But let's fast forward to today. So we have Nick Saban, who is the head coach of Alabama's football team. And from an article from Sarah Gray from Fortune magazine, he is the highest paid university coach in history by a long shot. So in 2017, he made over $11 million, with including a $4 million bonus. So this is millions of dollars. From comparing that to Walter Camp, this is not even remotely close. And it makes you really think what makes a coach and what makes him worth it. So I'm going to talk about my third grade coach, and he would always tell us that I'm not here for me. I don't get paid. I'm here for the players. I'm here for you guys. And he would always say, win or lose, I coach for the game, because he was more in love with the sport and us as players and the whole dream of it than anything else, not the money. And it's pretty crazy to compare a third grade coach to Nick Saban, who's the highest paid coach of all time by university standards. But it's really more about the principle to me and what a coach should be for the game. And we can look at the main part of this presentation is the student athletes and their lives. So if you want to look at their daily lives, according to goal and scores study article from the NCAA webpage, it's deduced that the average Division I football player would end up spending over 45 hours devoted to his sport, actually. And the NCAA has a 20-hour rule, though, that says that college athletes aren't allowed to spend more than 20 hours a week on the field. But when they made this rule, they left many loopholes and many back doors that would negate this rule. So this rule doesn't include time extra allocated towards film when they're recording and watching, time when they're getting physical therapy or healing from fractures and sports injuries. So 45 hours a week, that sounds like way more than a job. It's 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's more than a job. That's overtime as well. And this is obviously taking up a huge amount of time for these students as well as you can see it's having a negative effect, as you can see this graph. So now we'll look at the academics of these college students. So the main argument people like to play at is that they should be going to school, they're getting their degree paid for, and they're getting a scholarship. And as well as that they're going to go pro one day. So if you can see from the NCAA's own recruitment website, that less than 2% of these athletes actually become professional athletes in the NFL, NBA, and there's also a huge margin of athletes that end up either transferring to lower schools from Division 1 to Division 3, as well as students dropping out. So you can see that from this graph that the lower GPAs of students are for Division 1 players compared to non-athletes. So you can see that before how the 45 hours a week, that's playing a big effect into these students' lives, as well as students having to take time off and going away for weeks at a time to play sports in different parts of the country. And you can even see how things are taken away from them with this report I have from Devin Ramsey that I read from the Bleach Report at UNC. He was actually deprived of meaningful education, for his words, exactly. So for him, he had an academic tutor and that he had to have since he was not able to keep his grades up since he was taking so much time away from classes. And the NCAA and UNC thought this was cheating, so they took him off the team and ruined his chances of actually getting a scholarship any longer or even going into the NBA. So you can obviously see that the NCAA has a huge involvement. So they have these regulations like they're not allowed to have jobs or they're not allowed to have their name monetized, and really they're not allowed to be themselves since it's really no freedom for these people. You can look at Todd Gurley and his suspension in 2014 that I took from this article from ESPN. So he was a student, he was a player on the University of Georgia's football team. And in the span of 2 years, he only made $3,000 from his own name. He would send autographs on memorabilia, and the most he ever made was $400 off one autograph. But for a college student, $3,000 is all the extra money he was able to make in 2 years. That's much less than a minimum wage job. And you can see that the NCAA is just taking huge leaps to control these people's lives. But so overall, you can see that these colleges are making money off these athletes. These coaches are making money off these athletes. And these students are either working hard or they're going to fail and drop out. And as long as they follow these constricting rules with no guarantee, they might have a chance at going to the NBA or NFL. So you can see that everyone's making this sort of money and everyone's being compensated except for the students, the people that are actually working their hardest to actually get this dream and this money for these students in NBA, NCAA, as well as these universities. So I want you to look at this on a personal standpoint. So what if this was your child or your family and they were working towards their dream and they had no guarantee and they honestly had people that were going against them, making it harder for them. So you can see that this is why I feel that student athletes